This week, the Clarets face newly promoted Brentford in a never-ending quest for those first 3 points of the season. This is the No Nay Never podcast. Hello and welcome to the No Nay Never podcast. I'm your host, Natalie Bromley, and joining me are regular panellists Tom and Adam. And listeners, we're here to talk about a win. We did a win. Let's have a big party. Tom, Adam, welcome to the show. Both of you. Tom, starting with you, you must be delighted. We have something exciting to talk about.
Yeah, it makes a nice change on it, having a bit more positivity to talk about. I don't have to work so hard. We've got no Richard rants this week. And it was the first time I didn't go to the Rochdale game. It's the first time I've seen us win in the flesh since February 2020. So it was a really nice milestone for me to stick up there.
Wow, excellent. Adam, you must be feeling relieved now as well.
Yeah, I was starting to think I were the problem. Ever since I've joined the team, we've not won a league game. So yeah,
I didn't want to say. Comes in, starts sabotaging fantasy Premier League results, and then starts being the bad omen as well. We were very close to banning you. In fact, we had a bit of a technical hiccup tonight, listeners, where Adam couldn't get into the Zencaster room to start recording, and I did just basically make a comment to say we banned him, but we were only joking. We are, of course, able to reflect back on an absolutely thrilling, scintillating, in fact, 3-1 home win against newly promoted Brentford, where the Clarets literally came out flying and did not let up for any moment during that first half performance. Second half performance, much more subdued, but the job was done. You come in second half 3-0 up at home, and you managed to ride out that first 10 minutes of pressure from the opposition in the second half. It was a very professional way of just seeing out the game. Adam, let's start with you. Obviously, we'll go into the specifics of the goals, for example, and some key performances. But what impressed you the most about that first half display?
Oh, everything. No, the intensity from the off. We do tend to start games pretty well and then maybe fade slightly. But like you said, they just kept it up all the way in the first half. The intensity. Like I said, we'll talk about individuals, but Lawton, McNeil, all over the pitch, they were just flying from the off. It was exactly what we needed, exactly what the crowd needed, and to get that early goal just filled everyone with confidence. And when the sun came out at 3:00 after it had been chucking down all day, I just had that good feeling.
Yeah, definitely. Tom, was there anything tactically that you think changed and what gave us that lift? Because you and I have talked quite a lot this season about performances not being that bad, but results not really mirroring those performances. Could you put your finger on anything specific that was done differently or fell for us that converted those performances into a win?
I think something that really stood out for me was the amount of movement that we had in the final third. We spoke about the Norwich game. I know in that one, it was when Vidra went off injured that I really thought we were going to struggle here, because 3 centre-halves and all we could do when Vidra went off was send endless crosses into the box. They all got headed away. This time we asked so many more questions of a back three. You know, there was little balls around the corner. We were playing in the spaces between the centre-halves. They didn't know who to pick up. Cornet, 1 minute he'd be in the middle of midfield. Next he's on the left wing, then he's up front. McNeil as well, moving about a lot. And Wood looked very mobile as well. Probably not the best choice of defender to put against Wood. I don't think they didn't really have any pace to stop him. But yeah, it's that fluidity up front and the different options that Cornet gives us there. The fact that we had 2 wingers either side of him as well, so we had a lot more ball players in the final third than you usually see from us. And I think probably Brentford weren't expecting that. You know, they set up. They must have watched that Norwich game. They thought if we set up with 3 centre halves, we're going to have a field day heading these crosses away. But it didn't work out like that. So, and obviously when you get the goal that early as well, it really throws their tactical setup into disarray. So, yeah, that's what really stood out for me. The good football we played on the floor, passing, moving, really quick, really fluid, and it was really, really enjoyable to watch, I thought.
Yeah, it really was. Let's stick in with you, Tom. I mean, obviously we saw it was a dream start for it, really. Woody firing that absolutely incredible goal into the nets, and obviously that's exactly what you need is your strikers to be putting those chances away. I didn't think it was a goal that we're used to really seeing from Woody, to be honest. But do you put Woody down as a confidence kind of striker? And if so, how much do we think this is now going to kick on, from the season? Or did you maybe put his lack of goals down to something else?
I think the main problem that he's had at the start of the season is that he's barely got any service. I can't think of that many great balls he's had that sent him through. Probably the reason that you don't see him score that many of those is because he's normally offside, and obviously that proved with the second goal as well, the disallowed goal as well. But there he bent his run really well. Obviously had a bit of luck there. The defender should have cleared it, and he's only helped it on for Wood. But you don't lose that kind of finishing instinct. You could see the keeper did it a bit. He was in no man's land, and Wood knew exactly what he was going to do. It reminded me a bit of when we beat Crystal Palace 1-0 in the Europe season. The Wood scored a goal where the keeper comes rushing out, and he doesn't think about it. He just hits it first time, passes it into the back of the net. It reminded me of that one a bit. He saw the keeper off his line. He knew exactly what he was going to do. Bang, in the bottom corner. Great finish. And I don't know if it's necessarily confidence. I just think if you get enough balls like that to him in the box, he'll put one or two away. And we've barely done that this season. That Norwich game, like I say, how many of those crosses into the box went anywhere near? And very, very few, if any. So, if we can keep that level of service for him, he's a centre forward who'll prove he'll get double figures every season. So, hopefully, if our attacking play continues to improve like it did on Saturday, then he'll be back amongst the goals and he'll be scoring regularly again.
Yeah. One thing that Tom's just highlighted then, Adam, is the second goal, which followed very, very quickly, which God, who is Maxi, put in the net, judged offside by VAR. Now, I thought this season that the rule was where an offside call was that close, that the benefit of doubt would be given to the striker. And when I've looked at that again, it doesn't seem to be like, it seems to be another toenail one. I can't see the difference. And I don't know how you viewed that, whether you agreed with that or whether you are shaking your head a little bit like me as to how on earth that's not been given to the benefit of the striker.
Yeah, I thought it was close at the time. And you just always think Wood's going to be offside, even with the really close calls, with all the history of him winning the Golden Flag. But he knew it was a really close call at the time. It's probably the closest one I've seen disallowed. I think the new rules say that if the lines they can only be disallowed if the lines aren't touching. So if they are touching, it should be given. I've not really seen a definitive picture of it where it's close enough to actually see if there's a gap. So I don't know if you'd hope that the technology would tell them whether it's right or wrong, and it wouldn't be left up to someone in a room. But I've not seen any clarification of it afterwards. But yeah, it was definitely the closest one today that I've seen disallowed. And when you're in the stands and you've been to the Brighton game and we've gone 1-0 up, continued to dominate, not got that second goal, and then been eventually punished, it was just horrible to see it actually disallowed. And you're just thinking, oh no, we've fallen the wrong side of it again, and what's going to happen now? But obviously there were no worries about that this time. And it were another. They were very similar, weren't they? The first goal and then the disallowed goal, switch of play to the right, great ball, and I think I think Richard on one of his mega rants last week that was really enjoyable to listen to. Made so many good and bad calls in the same rant. It were just fantastic. He said, drop Wood. Love to see Vidra playing, because if Wood plays, we're going to play long balls, but we need to get Cornet in the number 10 role and play the balls in the channels and really try and take advantage of it. So I just listening to it. Well, in hindsight, listening to it, he just got so much right and so much wrong. But I think that's what happens when you've got so much emotion going through you. But he did get quite a bit right.
Very brave, Adam Dennett.
Well, he's not here, is he?
This is very, very brave, Adam Dennett. I know, but he's going to listen to it. I was listening to that and I was like, okay, I'm going to put it in the group chat.
He got all right.
Getting sassy.
In with that back three, we did switch play really well and get in behind them really quickly, move the ball quickly, and it really caused them problems. It was great to watch.
Yeah, it really was. Tom, another player who impressed me, well, actually, I thought the whole team played very well at the weekend, but one player particularly impressed me was Matt Lawton, who seemed to be on one of the Lawton spells that he has. And I saw a tweet, and forgive me, I can't remember who it was. I really should take screenshots of these so I can give people proper credit for them. But somebody put out a tweet that basically acknowledged that Matt Lawton tends to perform particularly well when he has competition for his place. And of course, Connor Richards has now come in, had a fantastic performance at the cup level. And a lot of people are quite rightly highlighting that we have some younger legs there ready to take over the reins once Barsey and Lawton are no longer first choice. And as it showed on Saturday, I thought he was very direct. I thought he got up front. He put some fantastic balls in for Wood. You were talking earlier about service to Chris Wood. Matt Lawton was one of the serious providers of said service at the weekend. Do you put Matt Lawton down to a player that thrives on competition, or are we trying to read something that's not really there?
I think it probably helps. You obviously know if you're not playing well and your place is fairly secure anyway, compared to if it's not. I thought Roberts was pretty solid against Tottenham. I didn't think he was maybe as spectacular as some said. The long throws were a lot of fun. And obviously that does put pressure on you if you've been coming up for the shirt. You have got to step up and perform. And, he did that in the best way. Obviously, fantastic ball through for Wood for the first goal. What I really liked about his second was, I've spoke a lot about the Norwich game already. I'm not over it yet, as you can tell. But the amount of times Taylor stood up across to the back post in that Norwich game, and there was just no one there at the back post, and it looked to me like he'd paid attention to that. He took the gamble of staying up, and obviously float across into the back post. This time there's someone there, and he took it with aplomb. So that was really good to see. Absolutely undroppable if he's playing like that. I think he's always had that quality, perhaps a little bit of a lack of consistency. But I think one thing that I do think with his crossing, noticed it in the last couple of years, he seems to cross from further and further back. That's obviously something that he's told to do, but it's more difficult if you sort of stood on the halfway line or that far back off the pitch. It's difficult to put a decent ball in, and I thought he did get a bit further forward on Saturday, and obviously reap the rewards. So yeah, really really good performance. And if he keeps playing to that standard, then Roberts is going to be waiting a while to get in the team.
Yeah, quite rightly too as well. I think we do talk a lot sometimes about Dyche and our frustration with him of maybe being stubborn when it comes to team selection, and particularly when a player's out of form. But at the end of the day, you've got to take the advantages of that when you have a player who's playing very well and doesn't then lose their place either, because you get the consistency of results and you get consistency of performances. We'll come on to Maxwell Cornet in a moment, Adam, because I think every single week could be a Maxwell Cornet show, because we are Maxwell FC and we are happy about that. I think for those of you who've been subscribing to Jamie Smith and his team's None and Ever newsletter, he quite rightly relabelled as Maxwell FC, and you know what, we're embracing it. There were probably the only downside for me from that first half, and listen, listeners, I caveat this by this is purely from an analysis perspective. It was a fantastic performance, but there were a couple of quite ouch misses from JBG, which didn't fill me with a massive amount of confidence in terms of ability when we do lose Maxwell to the African League of Nations Cup. So are we being slightly unfair to be critical of JBG? I think the first chance is maybe better than the second one. What were your takes on those?
Yeah, you'd hope he'd put it away. He seems to have a real lack of confidence on his right foot. When the keeper's come out that far and he's taken it that far, the only way you think he's going to put it in the net is taking it round him and finishing with his right foot. But he has scored some really good goals for us in the past, and I've not really. I can't think of many times where he's been in those sort of situations. We don't really find ourselves one-on-one with a keeper that often, to be honest. So I think that were another measure of how good the performance were, that we got into that position again down that right-hand side. And we were causing them a lot of problems down that side, and JBG played his part in that in the first half. He's not a striker. He's not going to score us 10 goals a season, is he? But I think, it was, again, after the disallowed goal, for him to miss that chance. You're just thinking, oh no, not again, not again. We need to really start punishing in them for these. But the second one were a bit more difficult on his right foot. He didn't have much to aim for. It'd have been a really, really nice finish if he would have managed it. He went back across the keeper, which you kind of want to do, and it fell to Wooden on another day. That could have bounced well for us, and it had been the fourth just before half time. Anyway, so try not to be too critical after Saturday, and I think overall he's been pretty decent this season. I think the balance of the team, like Tom said, we're a lot better with JBG, McNeil, and Corney all in the side. So
definitely
try not to be too harsh.
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely right. I think I'm probably just a little bit nervous because our league position does look a little bit precarious at the moment, albeit obviously that win was a huge bounce for us in terms of the table. Tom, did you want to just follow up on that point? I think you've got your hand up there.
Yeah, just one thing I wanted to say about Johan. When he's playing, I think he's a lot more disciplined than McNeil or Cornet. I think he does a lot more of the off the ball work. He covers his full back. He does a lot more running, and I think that also contributed to how much more solid we look. We spoke a lot about Southampton, about the gaps in the midfield, the fact that Cornet and McNeil weren't tracking back with the runners, and I think you get a lot of that from Goodmanson. So what he perhaps lacks in quality in the final third compared to them two, you do get that back with him. So I think you've got to give him that as well.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. A really good point. I forget, generally speaking, you've got to, we give our players a lot of, oh gosh, we've got hands up all over the place. Adam, there's a rebuttal there. What did you want to say?
No, I wasn't ignoring the Cornet part of that question. Obviously, I think it'd be a massive miss. You take, especially on this form, out of any team, then they'd struggle. But you look at the performances against two teams at home that we expect to be competitive and probably get the win against Norwich and Brentford coming up. And you can't ignore that he was involved, and he definitely has lifted the side when he is in it. And hopefully that doesn't play on the players' minds when he is absent. So I'm trying not to think about it yet, especially after all the positives from Saturday. But I'm sure it'll come round quicker than we want. I saw some rumours about it being.
Do we know when it is?
I think he'll go around New Year, won't he? I don't know if he'll manage to play the Man United game on the 28th before he goes. But it's one of them. You normally want international players to do well, don't you, when they go away? But you want them to lose all group games and get him back as quick as you can.
Definitely, because I think if Ivory Coast win, it's like 8 games, isn't it, that he's missing?
Yeah. I saw rumours last week about about it being called off completely because of something going wrong in Cameroon, and there were loads of like French statements coming out and everything, and people were translating them wrong. But I think that were all a bit false. It just got my hopes up a bit, really. So we'll see.
We do cling to things as Burnley fans, don't we? We grasp the slightest little rumour or the slightest bit of comment and go, we'll have that, we'll have it. Well, let's stick with Cornet then, Tom, because of course it was, I thought actually quite not subdued isn't the right word, but for once, for that first half, he wasn't necessarily the standout player. And obviously we're not going to underestimate the influence he has on the movement in the team and the creativity. But actually, until he scored, I thought he blended in, like normally when we've had a poor performance from the rest of the players, he's been a standout player. But it just goes to show the talent of the guy, that he can have a relatively quiet game by his standards, get a sniff of goal and just take it.
Yeah, I think maybe there was a bit less of the spectacular on view. The thing that stood out to me was that he seemed to be linking up better with his teammates. I don't know if that's from the change of position or just playing more games with them, getting more of an understanding. The one that stood out for me was the one you were talking about earlier with the ball across to Goodmanson for his second chance. He takes that really well. He looks up, he sees his man. I think his goals at Southampton and and Leicester, he's been on the end of things, but I thought he was a bit more involved in the build-up than I've seen him previously. Like I said, I don't know whether that's the position or just getting to understand his teammates better. I think linking up with McNeil, who's sort of the second best footballer, if you like, in the team, is going to help him with that.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, he doesn't have to be the headline man every week. You know, just contributing to the team as he did is excellent. And you know, even despite all that, he scored a goal that, as we say, was incredibly marginally offside, and then he scored an absolute cracker with his right foot as well. So yeah, just gets better every week. You know, I was gushing about him last week, and I've run out of superlatives. He really is great, isn't he? Brilliant.
Yeah, it really is. And I kind of love the way that he's completely found himself a home at Burnley. And it's like he runs around taking pictures with fans and like reposts fans' Insta stories. And it's just like the happiest. He's like the footballing equivalent of Buddy the Elf. That's just the way that he has this excitement and almost like this giddiness about him. And he just wants to play, and he just wants to with the fans, and he's amazing. I absolutely adore him already. Tom, we talked about this very quickly before we came on air. A couple of other talking points from that game. It wasn't that actually eventful in terms of incidents. We've already talked about the VAR offside. Do you shouts for a penalty? We think it was on Westwood, if we remember correctly. But interestingly, neither of us have been able to see any replay, and it's not been on any highlights since. So we're just going to mention it very briefly. And if any of our listeners have got any comments about this, then please get in touch with the show and do it. But do we think there was a penalty shout there on Westwood for that shove?
Yeah, I sit Jimmy McUpper, so on the opposite end from it. At the time, it looked to me like, well, there was sort of 2 or 3 players around him, and I thought, well, they can't all have got the ball. So it did look like someone might have, you know, made the word the match today pundits love to use, they might have made contact. Obviously, not that that's necessarily a penalty. I didn't know if maybe he went down a bit theatrically. But as you say, there weren't any replays, so that makes you think either one or two things. Either that, you know, there was a lot of other stuff that they had to cover in the game, or probably more likely that there wasn't that much in it, and therefore it wasn't worth showing again. So if we'd made a draw or a loss, then we'd got really annoyed about it. But being as we won, I'll leave it there.
Diplomatically put, Tom. Thank you. In terms of general league position, then, Adam, we have to consider we're still in the bottom 3. We did have a bit of a respite from relegation zone with Norwich and Leeds playing on Sunday, but we are now back in there, unfortunately. But it just closes that pack up. If we'd have lost at the weekend and Leeds would have won as they did against Norwich, I think that would have put us possibly in just the biggest amount of pain ever. Do you ever put any weight against the beating against the opposition? Because I know a lot of people just say, well, we'll just get 3 points against Liverpool or against United or somebody like that and get some bonus 3 points. Whereas I'm massively an advocate for the importance of taking points off your relegation rivals. And I think specifically, do you allocate any credit to just deflating the Brentford push at all? Where do you stand on this?
I think it's very hard not to plan out where you're going to get points as a fan. Like, I think most Burnley fans have probably already written off that we're not going to get anything from Chelsea this weekend. We do tend to get something somewhere where you don't expect us to every season. I've not looked at any stats on it, but I think we've definitely taken points off the Big Six at some point of every season that we've been in the top flight. You can't rely on them. The games against the Brentfords, the Norwiches, the Brightons, Leeds, like we've had so far, are probably going to determine where you end up in that bottom 6 to 8 teams at the end of the season. Obviously, take out our couple of wonder seasons where we've got 54 points, but they are massive games for us, and just the confidence that we can take from that going into. We've got a decent run of fixtures after the Chelsea game where you'd hope we're going to pick up some points. But if we'd have been going into that game having drawn or lost against Brentford, we'd have been 5 points from safety. Chelsea next, international break. Where's it going to begin? So it's an absolutely massive win.
Yeah.
In terms of the opposition in Brentford, I think we've played them at a good time. with injuries. They had Pinnock out the previous week, or went off injured the previous week. Don't know whether he were up to speed. And Bumo and Tony have obviously linked up really well in the first few games, and they've been unbeaten away from home and really been dangerous. Whereas the lad who came in, I don't know much about him, Force. He barely got a kick all afternoon. Taki and Ben Mee just dealt with him really well. So it might have been a different game if they'd have been firing on all cylinders, but you'd like to think with the performance we put in, like Thomas Frank said, it was written in the stars. Nice pun there, Tom. He wasn't a force to be reckoned with.
Oh, Thomas. Notice he put that in a chat box. He didn't dare say that on air.
You've got to call him out.
Now he's a big time. Yeah, now he's a big time terrorist celebrity. He's
just jealous. I didn't think of it before I started speaking.
I know you should do. Our listeners like a good pun. They'd have been sending him in left, right, and centre. I don't think there's anything else really to talk about in terms of the game. I think. Oh, actually, no. There's something to talk about, Adam. We'll stick with you at the moment. Burnley fans being Burnley fans because they are, and we're a rare breed. There were genuine whingers coming off turf on Saturday that, number one, Dyche took Cornet off, and that was apparently a bad thing. Number two, we conceded a goal, and that's a terrible thing. And number three, that we didn't go hell for leather in the second half and beat Brentford like 5 or 6-0, that we just took our foot off the gas. I have absolutely no problem with any of those things. And I'm hoping, Adam, that you massively agree with me.
Yeah, I do agree with you. I think Dyche has referenced it a few times in the past. When a team is 2 or 3-0 up at half time, the other team really does have nothing to lose, and it's hard to repeat that performance again against a team that doesn't have anything to lose. But I think we controlled it relatively well. I don't want to moan too much about the centre of midfield, but I thought Westwood and Brownhill were still sloppy at times. For the majority of the second half. I was more annoyed at Brownhill. My dad were more annoyed at Westwood, so I don't know. I think it was just perception, but it is still an area that worries me going forward. So here we go. I'm getting caught up in the negativity as well. But I didn't have a problem with the way we managed the game. The goal, again, sloppy play by us beforehand in the build-up, but the finish were tremendous. But again, you're just thinking, why? I was literally just getting comfortable. You can't, when you haven't won for that long. It was still a nerve-wracking occasion, even though we were playing well. We were 3-0 up. They weren't causing us many problems. That goal flies in, and then they got a free kick a couple of minutes later, and it's never easy, is it? But you wouldn't have found me whinging coming off the turf. I were in my own bubble of joy. I didn't even hear any of the naysayers either. So,
good
I don't
for
know
you.
how I missed that.
Yeah, good for you. I've got to say, Tom, once they did score that first, the Burnley fan DNA in me literally had a bit of a, oh no, let's not, if we concede another one, it's going to be horrible. You are cool as you are our Mr. Cool of the podcast. Did you have any nerves at all when they scored that first goal?
Well, if you're watching that game as a neutral or with a rational head, you're thinking, well, that's a good finish, but the previous 75 minutes does not suggest that Pope's going to have that much more to do between now and the end of the game. However, watching that as a Burnley fan, I was bundle of nerves for the last 15 minutes. Every time they took it in the corner, I'd keep it there 2 minutes. The thing is, I think this speaks to the approach that we took in the second half as well. We haven't won a game for so long. We haven't won a game this season, obviously, in the league. We've had that many games, especially at home, where we've gone ahead and we've not seen it out. Even with a 3-0 win, you're not expecting us to play that lead. The main thing was to keep it tight first 15, 20 minutes of the second half, just not let them get away into the game. We did that really well. But it's sensible, take Cornet off. The game's won. We don't need to risk him getting injured, etc., because we're so reliant on him at the minute. Sit back, sit deep. We've been good at it in the past. I think that'll restore a bit of confidence that we can go for that approach and it will pay dividends. So for me, it was, in some ways, it was quite comforting, the fact that we were able to basically sit on a 3-0 for half the game. But that's not to say that I wasn't nervous.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say I wasn't. I've just ignored all the Cornet questions. All I've done at work and when I've seen friends and stuff since is talk about Maxwell Cornet. You've asked me 2 questions about Cornet, and I've just completely ignored them. But yeah, I agree with Tom. I'm fine with the substitution. I don't think it was as we weren't as an attacking threat going forward in the second half. He wasn't getting on the ball much. He's obviously gone off injured a couple of times in recent games. We're 3-0 up. Just protect the lead. No problem at all with the substitution.
Yeah, agree. Excellent. It's a good point there, actually, about injuries and things like that, and talking about that moment of being a bit nervous, Tom. Was there any justification, do you think, for Dyche to really tighten things up, and with maybe 15 minutes to go, just to bring a third defender on and take maybe one of the forwards off and just properly see out the game? Because we talked about that against Brighton, didn't we? I know on one of Rich's rants, he talked about his anger that we didn't do that of the Brighton game. I guess maybe we were never really under any trouble, but I wonder whether that's something that Dyche could have done.
Yeah, like you say, it's not usually his MO. It's normally a striker for a striker and just keep the legs going up front. I think, especially at 3-1, the danger if you bring another centre-half and really sit on the edge of your own boxes, you're inviting teams onto you. Brentford this season, we've seen keep going the attack. They've got a lot of confidence. So I think it was important to still have an outlet, to still try and retain possession, keep the ball in their half. And obviously, if you take an attacking player off and put a defender on you, you lose your ability to do that somewhat. So it's not something you normally see from Dyche. I don't think it would have been the correct move in that game. Maybe at 3-0, but at 3-1, I think all you're doing if you do that is signalling to the opposition that you're nervous and you're not looking forward to the last 15 minutes. So better to take the approach we did, I think, and keep the ball, keep it in the far corner, and keep it away from our goal as much as possible.
Yeah, definitely agree. Moving on then to wider things that have happened this week, and a lot of the pre-match build-up was a celebration of the fact that we have now marked 9 years at the helm for Sean Dyche and his side, which is remarkable in generally speaking, but even more so when you consider the manager merry-go-round that the Premier League dictates. Look at this week. Nuno Santos has already been sacked as Spurs coach, and we are 10 games in. So Watford have already got rid of one coach. So we've played 10 games and 2 coaches have gone already this season. 2 managers, sorry. Looking back, Adam, over the last, I'm going to ask both of you this question. There's been pretty much mainly ups in Dyche's tenure, and I don't think there's really been that many downsides. Even the years we got relegated, we were never really that miserable about it. So I'm going to ask you to pick just one. You can't pick more than one. But what's been your personal highlight of the 9 years of Dyche's reign?
Oh, you've ruined that. I was definitely going to try and sneak 2 in. Ending the 34 years at Ewood Park with that come from behind win, when everything will line up that this was going to be the time. We'd have the 3 under Dyche. We'd had the 3 draws previously where we'd got a late goal with Vokes, and then Rhodes had hit one in off Duff's backside. I think it were actually before both of them, with the last minute David Dunn offside by a mile goal to equalise in the 95th minute. So being at all those games, being at the 5-0 in 2001, 2001, one of my first away games, all that misery to finally get the win at Ewood Park. And at the time, I didn't really do big celebrations for him to come and acknowledge the fans. He knew what it meant to everyone, and it was just an incredible atmosphere in that way in that day. And getting the bus back through a miserable Blackburn were just absolute music to my ears. It were a fantastic day all round. So yeah, that's the one. But there's, like you said, there's been so many.
Yeah, there really has. Tom, same question to you then, and hopefully you'll pick one that isn't Ewood Park, albeit that one's going to take some beating. But do you have a different one that's up there as your personal highlight?
Definitely up there for me, but it's not my number one. A few kind of little, I don't know, ambitions, maybe you call them, to have as a football fan. I never thought I'd see us playing the top division. Obviously, we'd already achieved that by the time we got Dyche. I'd love to see us, win a cup at Wembley. I guess we've had the playoff final, so that's something. But one thing that Dyche has given us that I never thought I'd see is to see Burnley play in Europe, and that really was incredible. I've spoken on here before that I was lucky enough to go to all the European aways. Aberdeen was a fantastic trip. Istanbul and Athens was really just not even just for the match, but the cities are special places. I went to the Parthenon, the Hagia Sphere. You think I wouldn't have got a chance to do all this without Sean Dyche. So it's perhaps stretching the definition of moment somewhat, but for me, it's the European games. I absolutely love that. I'd love to do that again sometime.
Yeah, two really good ones actually, and interestingly, mine's a different one. So out of the three of us on the analysis show this week, we've all got different ones. Albeit, I've got to say, in a similar thread to Tom, seeing the Clarets walking out away at Aberdeen for that European fixture, but that's obviously the same as Tom's. But my number one was winning the title and just being there, the end of the 23 undefeated season, to actually win the championship title and lift that inflatable trophy. Because it just felt at that time that the team that we had been together a while. By that point, they were a really strong band of brothers. We had Joy at the helm, who absolutely dragged them to that championship after a really disappointing first half of the season, actually. But I think by Boxing Day, we were, 7 points adrift, and we'd just been beaten 4-0 by Hull. So everything was going badly, and then they just went on this incredible run. And to just be away at the game where we clinched the title and just celebrate winning a trophy, because we don't normally, as Burnley fans, win something. We don't win cups. We're never going to win the Premier League. We'd won the playoff trophy, and we'd won a couple of playoff trophies. But to win an actual championship medal like that was really impressive for me. And the championship is a notoriously difficult league to play football in. So that was my personal highlight. A few others then from the No Nay Never team. I mentioned earlier on, I've not mentioned it for a couple of weeks in the podcast actually. Many of you, quite a vast majority of you now, do subscribe to this newsletter. So if you don't yet, do please get in touch. The wider team of No Nay Never, headed up by Jamie Smith, do a newsletter every Monday straight to your inbox. You can subscribe to it at nonaynever.substack.com. And it's just the thoughts of the No Nay Never newsletter team as to what's happened that week. And it's a really, really great read. It feeds into the podcast and vice versa. So please do drop that a subscribe if you haven't yet. And in this week's edition, came out yesterday, Jamie did highlight his top 5. He actually agreed with me, because of course he did. Number 1 on his list was winning a championship, but winning it in style, celebrating with a bloke trophy, which was just hilarious. Secondly, he agrees with Tom, Burnley in Europe might never happen again, and he loved every moment of it. Number 3 on his was getting Joy Barton to behave himself, and he does note that it must have been some omelette, and yeah, it must very much have been. Number 4, he agrees with Adam, finally beating that ugly lot from down the road, about time. And he has number 5, Maxwell Cornet. And yes, I'm going to add to Jamie's number 5 there and say Maxwell Cornet / Stephen Defoe, because they have been our 2 massively successful international ambassadors for Burnley Football Club. And, let's hope that in January, particularly if we are going to lose Cornet to the African Nations Cup, that we get that they get brave in the transfer market, and we get somebody else. We get out into Europe and get some more in there. That's probably all we have time for this week, actually. I don't think we've got a massive amount of other talking points. Next up is Chelsea, away from home, and a tough one really to have to go to when you've just got your first win. I don't think we are expecting to get anything from that game, but that's not to say that we won't try our hardest, but I think that's going to be a tough ask. So let's go past the Chelsea game, and let's just assume that that's going to be a loss, but if we get a point or 3, brilliant. where do you stand on the Palace game? Because our next game's at home to Palace, Adam, and I'm not entirely sure that's one we would want either. It's winnable, but also very difficult at the same time.
Well, we did the double over them last season. Obviously, they're a team full of confidence. We've had really mixed results, like some really good results and bad results over the years. A lot of that depends on whether Zaha is in the team, or a lot of it anyway. We were lucky enough to play them twice without Zaha last season. But I think we've got to take ownership ourselves. If we keep performing at the level we're at the level that we did against Brentford, we're going to cause a number of teams problems. And I think it could go, that game could go either way. But it's one to look forward to, and one we can relish in hope to bring home the 3 points. I think we can cause them some problems.
Yeah, definitely. Tom, do you agree with that analysis? Do you think we've got anything to fear from Palace?
Yeah, they look a decent team. Obviously, had a great result at the weekend. I think maybe been slightly overplayed in that they have only won 2 games now. I think because the wins are against Tottenham and Man City, they've really stood out. But I've heard people talking about them as if they're the finished article, and I don't think they quite are yet. But I think they're doing better than a lot of people expected them to, given that they got the air in so late and there was so much upheaval in the summer. For me, it's similar to the Brentford game. Show them respect. They're obviously doing better than we are this season, as are most teams. But it's a game we've got to target winning at home. Like Adam said, we were worried about our own performance against Brentford, and it saw us right. We need to start putting a few wins together, in a short space of time, because as you made the point earlier, Natalie, we said Brentford was a must-win, and look what would have happened if we'd lost. We'd have been 6 points adrift already. We're still 3 points adrift now. Like you say, we're probably not going to get anything on Saturday, so we can't let that gap grow and grow. So for me, it's a game that we should be looking to win. And that, again, as I say, that's not disrespecting Palace. I think they've had a good start, and I think they're a decent team. But at the same time, they are beatable. And if we're serious about staying in the league, then these are the kind of games we need to be looking to pick 3 points up from, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. Couldn't agree more. Do you have any temptation at the weekend against Chelsea to rest any players, or maybe try and play? Somebody said this to me at the weekend, and I genuinely don't know how I feel about this. But given that, we're not going to go into it defeatist, but given that the chances are we probably won't get anything, should we be starting to look at giving games like this an opportunity to some of our fringe players or some of our kids on the bench, some exposure to the Premier League, and try and see how they handle situation in a pressure environment? Or is that a no-no?
Not for me, and I think it goes against what we've done. Especially with an international break coming up. We don't have that many players going away. Just we've got to go into it. I think Dyche actually says we're going to every game thinking we can win it. I don't know how true that is, but no, I wouldn't be resting any players. If they're available, I'll be starting the same 11 this weekend.
Tom, I assume you were going down that same path.
Yeah, well, our record at Stamford Bridge in terms of it being the top 6 ground is not the worst. We've got a couple of draws there in the past. Obviously, had that fantastic win that time with the two Vokes goals. So, but for me, we're not in a position to be writing off any games. We've got 1 win out of the first 10. If we start throwing away games that we don't think we can get anything out of, where do you start with that? We've dropped points in winnable games. So for me, we need to be looking to make those points up in other games. If that's the point at Stamford Bridge or all 3, brilliant. As you say, it's not that likely, but at the same time, we can't go into the game thinking that it's an impossibility. We can't be doing that with any game because of how badly we've started.
Yeah, here, and that's a very good point to end the podcast on. I think let's keep it with a statement of intent that we are going to go into each season trying to stay up. We're going to go into each match trying to win, and we are going to be very mindful of our position in this league, and we're not going to let one win derail the master plan. Listeners, if you agree, disagree, want to add to anything that we've said on tonight's podcast, you can get in touch with us by tweeting us at NoNoNever, or you can email us at podcast@nonanever.net. We will be back on Friday. Dave and I will be back for the preview show where we'll look ahead at that away trip to Stamford Bridge. And the rest of the team will be back, minus me. I'm away next week, so I won't be with you. And I shall be on a plane, and I shall be in a different time zone, which will be impressive. My first time post-pandemic to get away. So the rest of the team will be back next week. I don't know who will be at the helm yet. Somebody will. We'll put Rich at the helm. We'll put a ranty Rich on. That'll be entertaining, and see how that goes down. But please do tune in, because we will be talking about the Chelsea game, and we will be talking about what we need to do in the international break and beyond. My thanks as ever go to everyone who's contributed to making this podcast, to my colleagues Adam and Tom for joining me and dissecting that fantastic win, which we're all still very happy and buzzing about, to producer Matt for editing all of this and getting it out there live. Finally, to you, the listeners, for downloading and listening to this episode. Your support is very much appreciated, and we would not be here without you. This has been the No Nay Never podcast. Until next time.